morning, podcast listeners. This is Ed Franklin with the Ed Franklin No Limits podcast. You can always reach me at edfranklin.nolimits@gmail.com or go to my website. You know how to get a hold of me. It's not that big a deal. But contact me if you'd like to be a guest or you know somebody would be a good guest. Speaking of good guests, through my Raising Eight podcast, I'm getting a lot of people contact me, say, "Hey, I'd like to be on your podcast." They want to get their new word out there. I want to get my word out there. And today we have Steve Seidel, who we met through an email.
Yes.
As I started looking at the things that Steve was doing and some, I think you're just going to find this a very interesting podcast, especially for men and maybe women. You can get a little bit better idea about who men are sometimes. But anyway, Steve, thanks for being on, man. I know you're on the East Coast and you got a lot going on, and you got two
Yeah.
daughters, and they'll keep you. I
Yeah.
believe me, I know how daughters keep you running all the time.
Yeah. Good daughters keep me moving. I'm a girl dad, and yeah, I appreciate the opportunity. I think at the end of the day, the more busy we like, there's that term busy we always talk about. I was literally just talking about people say they're busy all the time when it's just a bunch. I'm not saying it's a bunch of fluff, but the more that we can time manage, this is definitely a priority. I love connecting with people. I love the way that you connect with individuals on your podcast, and it's an honor to be here because it's all about connection.
Yeah, and we were just talking about we're going to talk about vulnerability a little bit today. How much I put myself out there in this podcast, and I'm happy about that. I'm not embarrassed about anything that's happened in my life. I guess the embarrassing stuff I wouldn't tell you anyway, but believe me, there's enough of that too. So first off, kind of give us an overview of what you do. You have your regular business, and then you
Sure.
have this side thing that you do. And so tell us about that.
Yeah, so I'm a little bit of a serial entrepreneur. At the end of the day, it's all about storytelling for me. It's about connection. And so I have my agency. We're an award-winning agency. We do PR and media. I call it purpose relations because it's all about our purpose in life. We
Right.
help change makers elevate their business. We work, with Coca-Cola, Amazon, you name it. That's the Seidel agency. And, I also have another company. I create some podcasts. I've had it's a scripted podcast that did well. But one of the things that is near and dear to my heart that came out of some really, really tough times is my men's collective. It's called Gent's Journey. And I relocated cross country from California to Kentucky during the pandemic. We all know how tough that was. We were all disconnected. It was a mess. And so not only do I have a virtual company, the Seidel agency, so I had no employees to interact with, and then I moved to a new city. I had no friends. I had a 1 month old baby, and then I found out my mom had cancer. So it was a tough, tough pill to swallow, and it was the hardest moment of my life. And so I knew that I needed somewhere, some place to go to. So I created the Gents Journey, and it was a safe space for me and the other guys. I call them my growth friends. Just like this podcast is a safe space, you're sharing it, and your listeners are wonderful. But we go pretty deep there, and yeah, it's fun. We like to really open up and be vulnerable in there.
Yeah, I'd like to get more information on that and see how I can help or how it can help me. I mean,
Yeah,
so COVID was crushing to us too. So I was running a chamber of commerce. I was in the promotional item space. So all the trade shows stopped, all the networking stopped. And I've talked about it before. I don't necessarily like talking about it because it starts sounding like an excuse, but it did
yeah,
happen. You can't ignore that it didn't happen. And so you did a TEDx talk about your mom, which had to be really tough to do, first of all. My mom was my star, my rock star, and she passed away when I was 37, and I was very close to my mom. And not in a mama's boy way. Like, you know what I mean? We had a great line of communication, and we'd speak about a lot of different things from relationships to whatever. And
yeah,
he was that person that I had to go to sometimes in those moral situations and say, and she'd always say, you know what the right thing is to do, right? You already know.
yeah,
You just want me to reiterate it. And that had happened in a couple different instances in my life. So TEDx is something I want to do too, and I'm investigating how to get involved with that. But
yeah,
this, so I have four pillars to my podcast away from the raising eight piece that I've been doing lately. And it's getting over limitations, right? You did that when you moved, you had to get over a lot of hurdles.
yeah,
It's telling your story because I think a lot of us tell ourselves the wrong story, right? I did a podcast once where I told a story that bring tear to your eyes, and then this story that was so uplifting, and it was the same time frame. It's just what you decided to, to count on, to look into, what you're telling yourself on a regular basis. And the third pillar is self-esteem. We have the lowest self-esteem in the history of America, history of the world, probably, and especially after the pandemic. And the fourth one is excuses. I said I can make an excuse to get out of anything, right? If
Sure.
I want to.
Yeah.
So the storytelling piece, I would talk to people. I went to did a lot of marketing study about storytelling, how important it is for a business owner to tell a story, right? And kind of
Mhm.
where they came from, because people start
Mhm.
buying from people then, right? They're not buying
Yeah.
necessarily the product.
Sure, that's what we talk about. Connection is currency. That's my whole thing, man. You could have marketing, sales, influence, impact. Those are all wonderful things, but at the end of the day, I think connection is what's crucial. And the way to connect, the conduit or the connective tissue are stories. Stories are what allow us to feel and to actually have empathy and to enlist in your story. We see ourselves in you. That's the mirror technique, right? We hold up a mirror and say, "Don't look at me, look at you." Just like I talked about my mom in my TEDx talk, you saw your mom in that TEDx talk. That's what it's all about, man.
Yeah, and I'm when I was really well connected, which I'm having to redo that now, people would offer their story to me a lot. And a lot of times what I found in their story was a lot of trauma that they really hadn't put behind them. Now, that's the wrong sentence. You can't put trauma behind you. It's always going to be part of your life, right? But you need to compartmentalize it sometimes to be the best version of yourself, especially if you're a parent, if you're in a leadership role at work and things like that. And I have a speech that I talk about that you got to first person you need to take care of when you get up is yourself. It's the,
Sure.
it's the oxygen mask theory on a plane. You got to put yours on before you can help anybody else. And I would talk to people a lot about that and say, you really need to. Did I tell you? I told you the story about the guy that was having a problem with his kids. Did I tell you
Yeah.
that last time? I'm not going to
Yeah.
reiterate because I
And I
told
agree with the oxygen theory. To me, I say it's like a fountain, right? You have that love that comes in, you want the felt water to, and then you have that ripple effect. So how you treat one person is how you treat everybody. It's
right.
that chain reaction of how you can spread good and kindness in this world.
And I heard Simon Sinek one time say that you need to be able to, with your friends, is just sit in the mud, right? I don't have an answer for your trauma or your what's bothering you, but I'm willing to sit in the mud with you and just kind of listen to what you have to say. And sometimes that's what you really need.
Yeah. No
Um,
mud, no lotus. That's an old Buddhist phrase. No mud, no lotus. The lotus flower is birthed through the mud, and that's where we have those teaching moments. And what we go through, we grow through. You have to grow. You have to be in these uncomfortable situations, or you're going to be stagnant, or you're going to revert back to, something that maybe not is an optimal version.
I think sometimes people think that their problem isn't a big deal because there's other people with bigger problems. But it's very subjective, right? I mean, you could have lost a dog when you're 3 years old and always remember that you lost that dog. I have memories back to when I was 2 and 3, 4 years old, and not trauma in my situation. But if I would have had a trauma, I could remember it. I know because I can remember other things. And as I was growing up, I was around a lot of death. We just had a lot of relatives that were at that age. And, back then people were only living to about 60, 65 anyway.
Yeah.
So I think I got a little cold to it at some level. And my dad passed away when I was 19, and I didn't grow up in this loving, like hugging uh, family. In fact, I can't even remember the last time my mom told me she loved me. Now I know she loved me, and it never didn't bother me. We just didn't have that. We didn't talk like that. My
Yeah.
family did. I was telling my kids all the time. We do it now. Hang up on the before you hang up on the phone. I love you. Blah 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 blah. And it was much more. We had a much more open family than my family was when I was growing up. So I'm a baby boomer. I was born in '62. So my dad was, the greatest. Well, he particularly wasn't part of the greatest. He was part of the greatest generation, but I'm not
Yeah.
sure we could launch him into that. He
Yeah.
was a good man. He had a lot of problems from when he was a kid.
Yeah, my dad too, like Archie Bunker. My dad was the first sergeant, and it's funny because you're talking about this. I was listening to it on another podcast today. about the older generations. They didn't necessarily open up as much, or maybe they weren't as emotionally available. But I remember my dad was a first sergeant, and he used to kiss me on the lips, and I would be like, "Oh man," and I would be like, "Oh, I've been embarrassed," and my friends would make fun of me and say, "You kiss your dad with those lips?" You're like,
Yeah.
that old phrase, "You kiss your mother with those mouth,
Yeah.
kiss your dad with those lips," and like that was his way. But we all have that soft side inside of us, and it's just about accessing that.
My dad had a look. I could tell he would always go to my sporting events, right? So I played baseball, basketball, football, all that. And he'd be at every event. Um, it was funny. One time we were in a high school basketball and a fight broke out on the court. They were all like 14, 15 years old. And one of the dads ran down on the court and was saying, I don't want my son to hear that kind of language. And I look up in the stands and my dad's got his head in his hand. Like, why would you do that? Just let them fight. Let them beat the crap out of each other. We were 15. No one was going to get really hurt. And but he always went to those events. And I remember one time I was coming over from a basketball game and I was crying because I didn't get to play. And he says, "Well, you can quit, but not to the end of the season. You're not quitting in the middle of the season, but you can get better. If you work hard, you can be better than the guy. And he's, I'll guarantee you, if you're that much better than another player, they're not playing. You're going to play." So we'd have a moment like that once in a blue moon. But other than that, I just knew my parents loved me, but we didn't have to tell each other every 5 minutes, And we were of that stop crying, wipe it off, spray it off the hose and stop crying kind of,
Yeah,
mentality.
much different now.
Much different now. So when my kids were being raised, of course, I have 7 daughters and a son, and my son mostly lived with his mom. So I had girls that were still athletic and, they'd crash their bikes and all that stuff. But there's definitely a different relationship with a daughter. I don't know if I was as hard on my kids as I might should have been sometimes. It's just a different,
Yeah, it's challenging. One of my daughters struggles a little bit with OCD and some neuro spiciness, and yeah, I just had a talk with her last night. I was like, "You can do hard things. You can get through this," and she struggles, and it's hard to put your foot down and not help them or to not accommodate them. But it's up to us to show them the way because we're not going to be here all the time. And that's why you and I are building our legacy so that we can get back to them when they become older. Like I think it was Will Smith. I hate to quote Will Smith, but I think he said it's like putting your kids in an arrow and like shooting them towards a target and letting them go. And they're on their own. Wherever it flies or wherever it hits, that arrow is going to go too. You can just help them put them in the right direction.
So where the kids grew up at the house we grew up in was at the bottom of a hill. And I grew up in that same house. And when you get speed wobbles on a skateboard, you can see the kids going down, right? I mean, this happened to me when I was a kid. I left plenty of knee meat on that street when I was, and I'd always use that metaphor and say, this isn't in life. I could see the kids getting speed wobbles, but I can't get to them quick enough to stop them, whether it was my kid or not. And my kids did some things. I have two kids that are addicts. One's clean, one's not. And I can see what's happening, but I can't get there to stop them. And now they're adults and they have to make these decisions. And as much as I want to intervene, I can't. You know, I mean, I can.
Yeah.
It won't go anywhere. But you know, and I know this. Since I've had so many kids, they all learn different. And when they're in a classroom setting, and that teacher doesn't have the option of teaching 28 kids 28 ways, they do. There were some kids that had some struggles that I was, that we kind of had to watch and encourage at the same time and say, look, you're just going to have to get over it in some areas.
Yeah, I think that, and that's where, for me and in our men's group, we talk a lot about leading by example, being present, making sure that they have their voices heard. We come down to their level, look them in the eye, try and have that relationship that maybe with baby boomer era, it was like a hierarchy. And it's not saying that, we're not above them or mentoring them, but they're definitely letting them know that they can be open and available and share. Like I would want them to share with us, myself and my wife, then keep secrets. And so that's where we're really trying to be open and present and lead by example.
We had a situation, I talked about this in my podcast, where we went to a dance in high school. My dad dropped us off, dropped me and two buddies, or dropped three of us off, me and three other guys. And we had dances all the time. We would go and hang out in the gym, and all the stuff you'd see in the 70s and 80s, 70s more so. And one of the kids' mom was a real train wreck, and she came to the school. And while we were sitting in the quad before we went to the dance, she grabbed him by the hair and drug him out of the school and just embarrassed the hell out of this kid. I never, and my wife and I made a conscious decision, we would never embarrass our children. You know, we'll kid with them, we'll tell them we're going to embarrass them, but I would never do that in front of other kids
Yeah.
because, because I'm having an emotional issue to go and embarrass my kids. I might pull them to the side and say, yeah, we're not going to do that ever again. And we can talk about it when we get home.
Yeah.
But my wife and I, after the podcast I just did yesterday that I'm releasing today, I think we did a pretty good job with our kids and we did a good job communicating with them. Now, you got a whole different ball game going on, brother, because my youngest is 29 years old and I'm dealing with grandkids, but this new social media and everything, you've got a whole nother uh, red flag out there that you got to really
Yeah.
keep an eye on.
And that's where we're seeing a lot of pushback too. And we're looking with the rise of AI, and I talk a lot about connection as currency, the human advantage, like seeing eye to eye, face to face, heart to heart is
Yeah.
really one of the most important things that we can do for each other and getting out in nature and seeing. But with the rise of social media, one of the it's merely a tool. It requires a human to actually actualize it. Same thing as AI, but putting in those guardrails. There's a really cool company called Tin Can, which is basically reverting back to the old school phones
Okay.
where they're plugged in, they can only call their friends. And so we do all of that and have a certain time frame on when we want to do the smartphone, which at least 13, 14, which is hard with the other children, but got to
We
do
just
what
got
you
one
do.
for my granddaughter and primarily for her to communicate with us. She goes to her aunt's for a week and then back to our house for a week. And
Yeah.
that's kind of why we got kids' phones when we were kids. It's just communication. They didn't have social media though, like they have now.
Yeah.
What bothers me about social media, let's say you want to be a speaker, right? Once you put that out there, you have all these companies telling you, you don't know how to do it. We're the ones that we can tell you how to do it. We'll show you how to do it. You're wrong, we're right. You're wrong, we're right. And that's what the kids are getting told too. And by the way, they're telling your kids that you're wrong and they're right, right? They're telling that your parents don't know what they're talking about. Now, we had that going on a little bit when we were kids, but it had to be verbalized. Like if I told a teacher or my mom, a teacher said something that was way off track, she'd go to the school. It didn't happen very often, but that's what would happen. So my grandson, we had this conversation the other day, and he says, "Well, he didn't agree with Charlie Kirk on a lot of things." I said, "Well, first of all, you're 18, and you probably don't have the information you have is virtual information. You don't even know if it's true, right?
Yeah.
I mean, we can look on your phone and see Charlie Kirk talking. Maybe it's not even him,
Yeah.
and that goes for a lot of things. So trust me, you're 18, you got a lot of years to learn some things. And my mom used to say, believe nothing of what you hear and half of what you see. And you really have to reiterate that with your kids is that just because AI says it doesn't mean it's right. And I found mistakes in AI and I use it all the time as a tool.
Yeah.
But that's one of those things as a parent, you really got to stay on top of. And that's where that face-to-face communication is vital. So vital.
Yeah. We're seeing a growing trend. We do PR for various companies, a growing trend for shared experiences. Getting back out to the movies, making individual events. You see the Savannah Bananas and their baseball team exploding. Different experiences where it's a memory, it's an experience versus spending on technology products or
Yeah.
different things along those lines.
And I think I told you, my son has five boys and a girl. He had opposite of me. And he does a lot with his kids. And I keep telling him two things. One, your kids are going to grow up way faster than you think. You're going to blink your eye and they're going to be 30 years old. I don't mean to give you a downer there, but it's going to go fast.
Yeah,
So as much time as you can spend sitting with them in a chair looking at them or at a park with them, do it. It's not even I get the experiences. We did the same things with our kids. We took them different places, went camping and all that. But the real value was in after when we finished eating and we sat there for an hour and had a conversation about how their day was going. That's where I see now what they're doing with their kids. Because I have 20 grandkids. I don't know if I Probably told
Yeah,
you.
you told me you got a Brady Bunch of a house up in there.
Hey, oh my God. And we had 11 of them over a couple months ago at one time, and it was so loud and it was so joyful. Um, the loudness got to me after a little bit, but the quiet is more deafening than the noise, right?
Yeah, of course.
So are most of the men that are involved in your, what's it called, gents?
Gents Journey, yeah.
Are they dads?
Yeah, so I build it for fathers, but we have other men that come in that, there's a rise in, Scott Galloway talks a lot about it, but teenagers, adolescents, young men who maybe have a challenging time struggling with fears and getting out of their element. You see Nike even just change their slogan from just do it to what if you don't? Because there's been a lot of paralysis to people that are afraid of failure, and so that's where we do have some younger gentlemen where we want them to fail forward, to get outside the comfort zone, to
Good for
just
you.
take the first step. When you take the first step, you can take that action and turn it towards momentum. But the majority of them, especially the founders, we are all fathers. We all have kids, and we all are entrepreneurs, so we understand what it is to deal with risk on a daily day basis, and know that we live in a world of unknown. We can't the moment we can control tomorrow, we can control the weather. So
Yeah.
we try and put those principles in place so that we can function at our highest capabilities, peak performance.
And I think that gets back to the social media again with you never see bad news. Well, you either see super bad news or really good news on social media, right? All the guys that are making all the money and they're standing in front of the Ferraris and everything. And this
Oh
is,
yeah, Ty Lopez, check out
yeah.
my car. Yeah,
And they're set, but this is the bar they're setting for these kids. And they don't understand that the kids are buying into that. And
yeah,
I never, when I tried, first of all, we weren't allowed to say I can't when I grew up. It was, you just did not say it. You'd get called out like right now. And we, of course, we use things like encyclopedias. You know what that is, right, Steve? I'm just
of
kidding.
course, Britannica, bro. Yeah, I almost bought
You
one the
say
other
it to a
day.
kid, an 18-year-old, they don't even know what fucking encyclopedia is. But my granddaughter was asking me, and I said, well, that's an encyclopedia was like AI, but we actually had to open the book. But anyway,
Yeah,
and when we tried something, there was never even a thought of failing. I mean, we just never, it never crossed my mind. Except maybe riding in a pool and a skateboard. You ever seen the Lords of Dogtown? That's how I grew up.
yeah,
Going in these swimming pools because of the water shortage. And we just didn't have, there was just no, and then no one made fun of you, or maybe a little bit, but that's how you got tough skin. And so when you talk about being vulnerable, we kind of weren't allowed to do that when we were kids, right? We weren't taught that way. My sisters had completely different rules than I did as a kid, which was not good for me because I had freedom, like too much freedom. My sisters were more, they had a leash on them, until they were a certain age.
yeah,
And I think my mom and dad let us boys do more than we, probably should have done. And I don't think we took too much advantage of it, but I think we probably could have been reeled in a little bit sometimes and at least spoken with or explained to. But when my dad dying at 19, now I didn't have really a guy in my life that was, that, and I had to not be the man of the house, but I was the only man in the house. So now I got to be a little different.
yeah. That's a lot. That's a big burden to carry. I mean, we have 7 different principles that we focus on. Focus, faith, family. We have fitness, finances, fulfillment, and there's all different areas that you had to take the burden on your own shoulders. And so what we try to do is break it down, make it super simple and easy. And so implementing, obviously, we all know about morning routines and habits and starting your day. You mentioned you
Oh,
get up
sure.
at 4:30 or something like that. But we got to start that day for ourselves and get that momentum going right out of the gate.
Yeah, 3:30 a.m. every morning, whether I want to get up or not. I don't always go to the gym, but I was there this morning at 5 o'clock when they opened the door. Um, I told you that's my time. That's my headphone time. No one bothers me. No one talks to me. I work out by myself. I'm actually wanting to get a partner so I can increase my intensity a little bit. But it's that time where I think about this podcast. I think about other podcasts I'm going to do. And, and then I get home, and then, like I said, every other week I've got another. So I got to take a kid to school, this and that. I got a call this morning because my granddaughter has a sty, right? So I got to make a doctor's appointment real quick for her aunt and this and that. And yes, you got to have some routine. But it doesn't. I'm trying to get us. I'm interested in this vulnerability from because the men in your group are probably much younger than I am. I would
Yeah,
assume.
they're all older people. So we created this really cool, interesting tool. It's called the Journey Deck because we're all on our own journey, right?
Okay.
And if you look at any Disney story, and it's funny because I talk about Disney in my TEDx talk because Walt Disney lost his parents,
Right.
and that essentially was one of the inciting incidents for him to really go off and really create these stories. Most Disney stories, there's always a parent that's passed away because there's just such like to your point, trauma, or there's a lot of association of being stuck. And then they find the best friend, whether it's a potential love interest or if it's a pet or a rabbit. And that friendship is the journey that they take to come up towards that end of Act Two when all is lost and you feel like it's the end of the movie. Well, no, they become the hero in the hero's journey, and it's all through connection. And so in our group, I've taken this deck to a bunch of different places, and it's questions over 5 years that have resonated and come to the surface that just allow us to share. And so it's just a very poignant question. And by sharing that, you're simply sharing your story, but yet it helps other men learn from your story or to see that being open is not necessarily a negative thing. It's actually a positive. And when you share that, you show that, yes, you may have been knocked down, but it's like Rocky said. What did he said? It's not how hard you can get hit, it's how hard you can get hit and keep moving forward. And so you're moving forward with that story. And so we asked them, there's an older gentleman like yourself who really, there was one guy, he broke down in tears when we asked him, what was the question, what your biggest regret was. And it had to do with his children, right? Because he didn't have a good, outstanding relationship with his daughter. And he told that story and he wept. And we all were like, oh my gosh, this is so powerful because we all have children as well. And we were just
Yeah.
thinking about not talking to our own daughters. Um, but let's see, would you be willing to answer one of these questions from the
Of
Journey
course.
deck?
Of course.
Okay, and you talked about magic tricks. So this is like a magic trick, but the magic is your story. Tell me when to stop.
Stop.
Okay, this is a good one. We just talked about Rocky and fighting. This question here is, what are you fighting for?
Um, okay, so this is interesting, and this could get, I don't want it to get long, but I lost my job in when COVID started, right? And I was, in my mind, an important person in the community, right? Everybody knew me. I grew up here, went to high school here, all those things.
Where's here?
Poway, California. So Poway is north of San Diego.
Okay.
It's about 50,000 people. And when I moved here in 1974, it was probably, I don't know, 25,000. I don't know how much it's grown, but I was close with the city council. I was close with businesses because of the Chamber of Commerce. And I wasn't super, I was okay popular kid. But I have more friends in high school now than I had back then. So a lot of my communication on social media and stuff would be about my my popularity or whatever. And I took that I liked that being popular, right? I liked being having people call me when there was a problem. I liked that stuff being out there in the community. So once COVID started, there was we moved for a reason, and it's another podcast, but we moved over to an area of just a couple miles from Poway, but I'm like out of the community now, and I'm not the Chamber of Commerce person anymore. I was having a hard time finding jobs that were decent. I'm a little older now.
Yeah.
I'm very good in sales, marketing, all that stuff. Very good at that. Very good leader in my mind. So I've lost like my in the pecking order. I've lost a lot of space, and I'm fighting to get back into that space through speaking, through my podcast and things like that. I want to be relevant, right? And when I started this podcast, it was really about younger people learning from me not to do stupid shit like get married too quick or have children out of wedlock or do things like that. I want everything your parenting is more about you and your wife's relationship than it is you being a parent because your kids are looking up at you two going how are they going to
Right.
handle this stuff.
Yeah.
It's imperative that you have a strong relationship. And what happens is people they start dating, they get married, and then they go, oh, the wedding was great and everything, and they have a kid, and about 3 years later, they're going, what the hell did we just do? What did we do with this child? There's no book. I can't find the manual, right?
Yeah,
But if they haven't even discussed it. They just have a kid because you can. So what I'm
yeah,
fighting for is to be relevant, to be a tool for people to go, oh, you should ask that Ed guy, right? Because that's
yeah,
how it used to be. I used to get calls all the time, and I've really almost lost my identity at this point, and I'm fighting to get that identity back. Now it's going to be different, right?
yeah,
And it's funny when you tell people I want to speak, I really want to speak for a living. That's all I want to do is speak for a living and do my podcast, right? And it's speaking too. And when you tell people, they go, "Oh yeah," they kind of roll. They roll their eyes on accident, right? Because they don't have that dream. They can't see my vision, and they don't
yeah.
even realize there's people out there speaking every day that make a great living doing it. So I guess that was a long answer to I'm fighting for I want my identity back, right?
Yeah, you mentioned a couple really influential things. Is just feeling like you're welcomed and people can come to you and have questions and so I think at the end of the day, it's all about that community and having that connectivity and having somebody to share that with. So thank you for sharing that.
And I go, so once a week, I try to go and help to the senior center and I serve them lunch. So I'm 63, but I work out the same as I did when I was 50, 35. I still lift the same, do all the same
Yeah,
things. So when I go to the senior center, although I'm a senior, these people are much older than me. And even if they're close to the same age, they're still really much older than me because they're
yeah.
not around this youth. I'm around youth all the time. I'm talking to kids and teenagers and things like that. And I feel like seniors are getting pushed out of society. It's like, you know what? You've done your share. Just go sleep, go to sleep. Just go to your thing. And then we're really pissing you off because we're living longer. So that's irritating people more because seniors are living longer. Do you know for
Yeah.
the first time in the history of America, seniors are going to be the biggest demographic?
Yeah, my best friend, he started a company as living care home services because there's such an innate need for
When I
that.
worked
And
for a
that was
company
something
like that.
that was really apparent when my mom was sick. She had to go into a rehab facility, and it was not a great place. And I
Yeah.
went in there, and it smelled bad, and I was like, "What's going on here?" She's like, "Have you ever been in a nursing home or senior care living before?" And I said, "No, I haven't been." I'm like, well, and they went like that, like that's the norm, that's acceptable. And so
It's
it's up to
horrible.
us to really, increase the standard of living, the standard of care, and show people that humanity is still a thing.
So I was working for a company that offered in-home care, right? So someone could age in place.
Yeah,
Listen, if I broke my hip, God forbid, I don't want to go to a facility. Those people are old there. I don't want to be with those old people. I want to be at home. Now, if I need to help up the steps or help meal prep or something like that, that's what we would offer as home care. And it's very busy business because the people that want to make money see the demographic change that's happening. They're calling it the senior. There's a name. Senior tsunami is what they're calling it because all these people are getting to that age where they're all going to be around. So, look, I think what you're doing is amazing. First of all,
thank you.
I don't know. I don't understand a couple things. I don't understand how we still have a 50% divorce rate in America, and we should be way better at this, right? I don't understand racism, how we're still racist in 2025. I don't understand. I grew up in a very, not in Poway, before I went to Poway, I grew up in a really multicultural place. And when I got to Poway and all the white kids came into school, I'm like, where the hell is everybody? I mean, what did you guys do with everybody? And I still don't understand how we have racism and how we have 50% divorce rate. I mean, wouldn't you, in anything we do in life, when you started your business,
Fear. I'll tell you how we have it. It's fear, and it's people speaking fear over love. At the end of the day, we're all humans, and so love is the most important. But people position them, but it comes back to what we talked about earlier, connection. But for fear, there's that disconnection, and the way that they're disconnected is through stories and storytelling, and stories that are not necessarily the right stories of compassion and care and empathy. What I preach is do good. My mission is do good, give back, make an impact. But you can do good, but be great. Be grateful. Be reflective. Know about your life. Be empathetic. Be accountable. Say what you do what you say. Like if you're gonna do something, freaking do it. And then lastly, be transformational, which is what you're doing here. You're allowing people to shift their mindset. And so I agree with you. There's tons of people in this world that are all of those isms, if you will. And so if we can remove the isms from the world that we live in, that would be phenomenal. And the way that it happens is by you leading by example. But the
Yeah.
first step, I think, is bringing people together through stories, asking the questions so that they can meet somebody eye to eye and actually speak through it versus hiding behind a keyboard.
Well, I think my kids' generation are doing their kids a disservice at times because they're not disciplining them, because they're allowing too much outside stuff in, and it's kind of hard to stop because the dam is open, right? And that's social media and things like that. I have this wonderful experience 5 days a week when I have to take my granddaughter to school and back every day because we have this awesome conversations, 15, 20 minutes long, depending on the traffic. And she does open up to me and we have discussions. She's had, you know, you just wait, girls. She's had
Yeah,
issues with other girls at school, and we've had those conversations, and I've had to tell her, look, just you just have to focus on school and get away from that relationship. So a funny thing had happened. She had an issue with a girl, and the mom texted me because I'm the one that goes to school all the time, picks up, and I stick out like a sore thumb because I'm big and tattooed, and so they
yeah,
know Piper's my granddaughter. And she texts me and says, "I think we should discuss this." And I'm like, "No, we don't need to discuss it. Let the kids work it out. You don't need to be involved in this. They're 10 years old at the time." And this woman has not talked to me in a year and a half. She won't even look at me because
yeah,
she doesn't know how to emotionally handle this whole thing. And you need to let your kids sometimes. This is why I used to say, this sounds so antiquated. My kids were not allowed to fist fight when they were in elementary school. Now I had girls; they weren't really into it. But my son, for instance, he got in a couple of fist fights, and oh my God, it was like the world's kind of. I said, if you let them fist fight now, they kind of learn the hierarchy and they learn that getting hit in the face isn't fun. And by the time they get to middle school and high school, they're calmed down. They understand the pecking order. It's not a horrible thing. Men generally go to violence. If someone cuts us up, oh, I'm going to kick that guy's ass. We do that too often, right? Especially my generation.
yeah,
But we won't even allow them to express themselves because they don't. We want inside voices and all these other things, and sometimes you gotta toughen up just a little bit, girls and boys. You
yeah.
gotta fight through, and you gotta embrace the suck. I just did a podcast about this. You gotta go to the fire sometimes to
You
get
definitely have
through.
to walk through the fire. I mean, that's how you sharpen your sword, right? If you're going to
Yeah.
sharpen the sword, you got to put it in the fire, and that's how you become. And you talked about tools, having these tools. I the same thing happened with my daughter. She has a couple friends, and we say, "Does she blow out your candle? Does she light that thing up? If she's lighting it up, and boom, you're scorching, and you're firing on all cylinders, and you're bright as can be, and your energy is wonderful. She's a great friend." And you see it, like you said, you're a mile ahead. You see that friend that's not necessarily going to do right or is going to backstab. And you try and give them some signals, but it's up to them to figure it out.
So and I'll leave you with this thing, and then we'll get out of this. We'll close this up. My mom used to tell me when I was a teenager, when I was a little kid, I hung out with some pretty rough kids. Two things that she did. There was this family that would pick on my brother all the time, and he was 7.5 years older than me, but he's only 5'6", and I'm 6'2". So
Hmm.
back then, I was probably his size already. And this kid kept picking on him. My mom says, "Look, you're gonna have to go fight him. You got to go fight." I mean, he was like 10 or 12 years old. You're just gonna have to go fight this kid. He goes, "Well, what if he beats me up?" Says, "Well, I'll tell you what. Make sure he knows who he's scrapping with somebody." And he did it, and there was never another issue. Now imagine your mom telling you, "You're gonna go have to fight him. Just go fight him. Come home when you're done," kind of thing. But she used to say this to me. I hung out with some pretty rough kids in junior high and high school. She says, "Ed, you can be a good influence, and if they're bad ones, you can be a good one." And the kids respected me that I hung out with because they would come to our house and they had a whole different experience than they did because my mom would talk to them, not at them, and she would converse with us, and we had a great time. We had a swimming pool. They'd stay the night. We do all kinds of fun stuff, all good-hearted, good stuff. And she'd always say, "You can be a good influence. You don't have to be a bad one." And I always kept that in my mind for years, that you can be that light, right, to somebody.
Yeah.
And generally, if they're picking on you or something like that, they're looking for some light. That's
Yeah.
generally how it goes, but you got to get your emotions out of the way first. So, Steve,
Yeah.
listen, I could, like most people I get on my podcast, I could talk to you for hours about this stuff, but we all have lives we need to get back to.
Can I
Um,
tell one quick story before we wrap
100%, do
up?
whatever you want.
So I talk about this at my TEDx talk. It's called The Hidden Power of Grief. It's on YouTube.
Hmm.
But when I was an artist and living in New York City, I pursued, my parents forced me to go to school to be an engineer, and eventually I found my heart. But I wrote a little piece. It was called Fries at the Bottom of the Bag. And it was all about when I was younger, my mom used to pick me up after a sporting event and we'd go through the drive-through. And it was always a joy that I'd look forward to getting that empty bag of fries and handing it to my mom. You're eating the Happy Meal and seeing how much joy it gave her to eat the fries at the bottom of the bag. And we all know those are the most tastiest ones anyways, right? They're greasy, they're tasty. And so for me, it was a reminder that too often we look back on those moments and savor them, but really the good times are unraveling for us right now. And when my mom was passed away, I was cleaning out her house, and there was a bag, and at the bottom of the bag were these McDonald's fries. It was a little telephone.
Right.
But I want everybody to remember, just like you talked about, these are moments. The French fries, they're a reminder that you can be loved, you can be happy, and you can choose joy in this moment now with your family and your kids and whoever you share it with. Because you may look back and be like, oh, those are the good old days, but cherish the moments that we have right now and tell the people that you love them.
Yeah. It's
Thank
funny
you.
when I take my daughter to school, I really hate driving over there. It's just, once I get her, I'm fine. Or once I'm taking her, I'm fine. Then I gotta drive back home. It's a pain in the ass. But I'm glad you brought that up because during your TEDx talk, you told that little story. So
Yeah.
when we were kids, we didn't have like now you have a fast food thing every other doorway, right? When I was a
Yeah.
kid, we didn't have that, and we were poor, poor, poor. But once a month or so, my mom would take us to McDonald's, and we would get a couple hamburgers and French fries. And she wouldn't let us buy soda. We had to go to the store and get soda, like RC Cola in a bottle.
Yeah.
And when you brought that up, I'm like, oh my God, because I don't really eat that stuff now.
Yeah.
I actually had McDonald's for the first time in 10 years on Sunday, and I'm still sick from it. I swear to God, I can't stand that food. But
Yeah.
when you brought that up, I'm like, oh my God, you just took me back to a time with my mom, uh,
Yeah.
within a couple things you said in that. But do you have a website for Gent's Journey?
I do. It's gentsjourney.co. So gentsjourney.co. We have a really amazing tool. It's totally free. And we have a Substack with over 6,000 users. We put out content on the regular. We have the Journey deck, which I mentioned, which is available on Amazon.
Right.
But if you go to gentsjourney.co, you can sign up for our locker room, which is a learning hub and social club. And that's where we get together. If you want to do premium service, we have meetings where guys come in and we ask some of these really cool questions from the deck and we share our experiences and our challenges and ways that we can overcome them. And we're getting ready to have a retreat in about a year from now.
So I'll put that in the link. I'm not going to drop this podcast until next week
Cool.
because I'm getting backed up, and the podcast I did yesterday ended up being two parts. And
Nice.
by the way, if you I'll send you the links to those podcasts. The guys would enjoy this podcast because what it's about is transformative parenting. And I have this doctor on there that talks about all the things we just kind of talked about, but he's got a lot more data than we do, right? He's got all these years of experience and all this. And I'm talking to a clinical psychologist tomorrow morning about embracing the suck,
Yeah.
overcoming these things we have. So I want to stay connected to you, and I have your phone number, and I'll put all your information in the link when I send it to you and when I describe it on my um, social
Great.
media. But listen, I'm so happy that you reached out to me. You're just the coolest guy in the world, and I love meeting new people, and especially younger people that kind of resonate with me because a lot of the guys I talk to in my age group are starting to give up. They're starting to watch too much TV, and
Yeah.
not. They're
You
just.
look great, dude. I had no idea you were 63. I would have said like
Oh,
52.
well, I appreciate that.
So yeah, yeah,
It's
you
funny. A
definitely
friend
look.
came to my house one day and I don't know, we were drinking some beers or something, and he grabs the remote, turns on a TV, and he knows the entire. Like I don't watch hardly any TV. When these kids say, "Hey, have you seen this movie?" I'm like, "I don't know what fucking talking about." Are these
Yeah.
Netflix things? I don't even know. I watched one here and there. I watched the Arnold one that was 3 hours long, or the
Yeah.
things like that. But he knew the whole thing, and I said, "Dude, that bothers me about you that you know the entire TV guide. Yeah,
Yeah.
you don't even know. Do you even know what a TV guide is?"
I know a TV Guide for sure. I used to
Okay,
get TV Guide back in the day.
right
Yeah,
back
you
in the
know
day.
all the stations and the programs and all that. But yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
now they do it for you. But yeah, totally.
So I don't even, we'll put TV on in the background, but that's all I did. My point to him was, you need to get out and move, brother. You need to go out and, come to the gym with me. Come do whatever. You don't have to, no one's looking at you at the gym. You can't be, you don't have to be great to start, but you got to start to be great, right? That kind
Yeah,
of thing. So again, thank you very much for reaching out. I will stay in touch with you and I'll send you all the information from this podcast.
right on.
Let me do a little outro and then just stay on for a second though. So this is the Ed Franklin No Limits podcast. Great conversation we just had. I hope you share this with everybody, men and women. Share it. This wasn't gender specific. And you can always reach me at edfranklin.nolimits@gmail.com. Thank you for listening, and I will be seeing you guys all soon. Thank you.